The great hall of the Galactic Concord gleamed under the weight of countless lights, each shining from a crystal orbiting the ceiling like a captured star. Thousands of delegates from every corner of the galaxy had gathered to witness a moment they would never forget. The law about to be announced was meant to unite, but in truth, it carried fear in its shadow. For centuries, royal bloodlines had married among themselves, keeping power tightly sealed. But now, the Conquered had decided it was time for change. Every royal family must form a bond with a species outside its own. Every heir, without exception, would be tied to someone from another world. The princess of the Velari Empire sat on her elevated throne, her silver hair reflecting the soft light like threads of metal. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the massive chamber. She had heard the rumors about the law. It was said that some alien species were considered weak, almost unfit to enter royal houses. And humans, she had learned quickly during her studies of galactic species, were regarded as weak, fragile, and short-lived. The princess tried not to show her feelings, but a cold shiver ran down her spine. This law, though designed to prevent war, could easily ruin her life. For the first time, she realized that the lottery of species might not favor her at all. In the center of the hall, the high official of the Conquered raised his hands. Silence fell instantly. The sound of breathing filled the space as delegates from 1,000 species waited for the names to be called. The official opened the crystalline scroll containing the results. 1,023 species have been accounted for, he announced in a voice that echoed like a chime across the hall. And now, the selected bonds for the heirs of the Velari Empire will be revealed. The first few names came and went, each one acceptable. A Shurin, a Zevran, a Tylian, none caused her to flinch. She allowed herself a small breath of relief. Perhaps the lottery had spared her. Then came the last name. The scroll glowed faintly as the official's voice filled the hall. The princess froze, her eyes widening as she stared at the name. A human, her mind raced. Humans were unpredictable, fragile, and impulsive. They were known for their emotions more than their intelligence, for their courage more than their planning. And here one was chosen to be her bond. The princess felt her stomach twist. This law, meant to secure unity, had just made her life a living nightmare. Whispers began to ripple through the hall. Delegates exchanged looks, some incredulous, some amused. The Velari nobles around her tensed. Even her closest advisors avoided meeting her eyes. You cannot be serious," she murmured, almost to herself. But the high official continued as if nothing had changed. Marcus Hale is summoned to the Velari Imperial Court to fulfill the Conquered's law. All arrangements will be made immediately. And she did, finally, in a voice smooth but icy, she said, "Let it be known that I do not accept this bond willingly. This human is undesirable." Far away, on a small, forgotten human colony, Marcus Hale lived a life entirely ordinary. He grew crops, repaired equipment, and listened to stories from his neighbors about the vast galaxy beyond their planet. He had never imagined a life in a royal court, let alone being bound to a princess from a species whose technology dwarfed even the best machines of Earth. Yet as the message from the Conquered arrived, glowing on a tiny communication device in his hands, he did not panic. He read the words twice, trying to be sure he understood. The words were simple, but the meaning was monumental. Marcus Hale, human male, is chosen to form a political bond with Princess Lyria Velari. Prepare for immediate departure to the Velari Imperial Court. For a moment he stood frozen, staring at the device. Then he smiled faintly, shrugged, and packed a small bag. Humans did not often have the chance to be part of galactic events, and though the challenge seemed enormous, he felt a curious calm. Perhaps this was his chance to see the universe beyond his little colony, and he would meet it on his own terms. Meanwhile, the princess prepared for the arrival of her nightmare. She had ordered extensive briefings about humans, their history, their behavior, and the ways they had been underestimated by other species. Every piece of knowledge only made her more certain of what she had feared. Humans were reckless, emotional, and far too bold for their own good. How could she trust one of them with her life, let alone with the future of her empire? When Marcus arrived at the capital, escorted by a small fleet of conquered ships, the princess observed from the balcony. She expected weakness. She expected fear. Instead, she saw something else. The human's eyes were steady, curious, and calm. He moved among the alien guards and nobles with a quiet confidence that made some of them uncomfortable. He did not bow excessively, nor did he boast. He simply looked around, taking in the vastness of the capital, and nodded politely at those who addressed him. The princess felt a flicker of unease. Perhaps the human was not as fragile as she had been told. "Your Highness," one of her advisors whispered, "he seems ordinary. Perhaps this will be easier than you thought." They may seem ordinary, but one mistake, or one bold choice, could destroy everything we hold dear. The princess watched from a distance, still wary, still unwilling to let herself hope. Then came the first incident. A malfunction in the palace's gravity systems trapped dozens of servants and minor nobles in a zero-gravity chamber. Panic swept through the staff. The Velari guards hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Protocols existed, but no one had expected this to happen while a human was present. Marcus did not hesitate. Without asking permission, he activated manual overrides, guided terrified servants towards safety, and even helped injured nobles down from floating ledges. He ignored the sharp rebukes of some palace guards, acting with a calm determination that seemed almost impossible. The princess, who had observed from above, felt her pulse quicken. This was not weakness. This was courage, decisiveness, and a refusal to let others suffer if he could help. She had never expected a human to act this way. In all her studies, humans had been written off as fragile, reckless, and self-serving. Yet here, one human defied all expectations. When the crisis ended, Marcus merely brushed off the praise of onlookers, adjusting his simple jacket and asking quietly if anyone needed water or medical attention. The princess found herself studying him longer than she intended, noticing small details. The calm steadiness in his hands, the way he moved naturally through chaos, the way he spoke to frightened staff without condescension. For the first time, she wondered if she had misjudged him. Perhaps humans were not weak after all. Perhaps in some strange and dangerous way, they were strong beyond imagining. The day ended with a quiet, tense banquet in the palace hall. Aliens of every shape and size gathered, exchanging cautious words and polite smiles. The princess sat rigidly, careful to maintain her poise. Marcus sat beside her, observing the gathering with mild curiosity. When a group of noble delegates whispered mockingly about humans and their supposed inferiority, he did not respond with anger or indignation. He simply listened, then made a small joke about his own awkwardness, and the room laughed, not at him, but with him. The princess, watching this, felt an unfamiliar and uncomfortable thought creep into her mind. Maybe the nightmare she had feared was not the human himself. Maybe the real challenge was recognizing that he could change everything she thought she knew about strength, courage, and loyalty. And so, the first day passed, leaving the princess awake long into the night. She stared out over the sprawling city, her mind filled with questions she had no answers to. How could one human, small and untested, disrupt centuries of galactic order? How could a single species, underestimated by all, become the center of her life, and perhaps the galaxy's future? One thing was certain. The law of the conquered had chosen Marcus Hale for a reason. And the princess, for all her pride and preparation, was not yet ready for the storm it had unleashed. The sun rose over the crystalline towers of the Velari capital, casting long, golden reflections across the polished streets below. Despite the beauty of the city, tension lingered in the palace like an invisible fog. The Princess Lyria moved through her chambers with careful steps, her mind replaying the events of the previous day. Marcus Hale, the human chosen by the conquered, was unlike any creature she had ever met. It was not just his calm in the face of danger or his quiet confidence. It was something more subtle. His eyes, the princess admitted grudgingly, held an intensity that seemed to see more than what others allowed themselves to see. He looked at people and situations in a way that unnerved even the most seasoned Velari advisors. Lyria had spent her life learning to control her emotions, to weigh every move with precision. Yet Marcus appeared to move through the world without fear, almost as if he belonged everywhere he went. Her first thoughts were of disbelief. A human was never supposed to inspire confidence. They were impulsive, fragile, and overly emotional. Yet here one was, defying every expectation she had ever been taught. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her pride intact. She would not admit it to anyone, but a part of her wondered. Could she learn from him? Meanwhile, Marcus began his second day at the palace with a mixture of curiosity and determination. The corridors were massive, far larger than anything he had ever seen. The technology was unlike anything on his home colony, yet it was not intimidating. To him, it was simply another system to understand, another puzzle to solve. He approached each challenge with the quiet patience he had learned on Earth, where resources were scarce and mistakes were costly. Today, he was scheduled to meet the Council of Nobles, representatives from alien species who would assess his worthiness as the princess's bond. The council expected awkwardness, hesitation, or even fear. Instead, Marcus walked with steady steps into the chamber, eyes scanning the room with careful attention. "Human," one of the counselors sneered, a tall figure with translucent skin and shifting colors that reflected his mood. "You are far from your home. Do you even understand the customs of this court?" "I do not know all your customs yet," he said calmly. "But I am willing to learn. I want to understand, not to insult." The princess watched from her throne, her arms crossed. She felt a strange mixture of irritation and curiosity. She had expected a failure, a human who would stumble and embarrass them all. Instead, he carried himself with quiet dignity, asking questions, listening carefully, and demonstrating a level of awareness that made her advisors shift uneasily in their seats. After the council meeting, Marcus was taken on a tour of the palace's operational systems. The Velari technology was advanced, far beyond human standards, but Marcus did not seem overwhelmed. He asked questions, observed patterns, and even suggested small improvements to certain routines. His suggestions were simple, practical, and effective, yet they revealed an ability to think logically under pressure, something the Velari often assumed humans lacked. The princess followed him silently, noting how the palace staff responded to him. Where alien delegates often hesitated or argued, humans like Marcus did not wait for permission if action was needed. During a demonstration of the palace's defensive drones, a malfunction caused several of them to spin out of control. Guards froze, unsure how to respond, while Marcus stepped forward. He moved with precision, disconnecting the drones manually, his hands steady even as sparks flew around him. A small child who had wandered too close was guided to safety by Marcus, who spoke to him calmly, soothing the child's fear. The princess's jaw tightened. She had never seen anyone act with such combination of bravery and practicality. A human, she reminded herself, was supposed to be weak. Later, in the private gardens of the palace, the princess confronted him. The gardens were vast, filled with alien flora that glowed softly in the artificial sunlight. Birds with crystalline feathers chirped in the air, and the scent of strange flowers filled the atmosphere. "You are unlike any human I expected," she said, her voice low but steady. "Tell me, how do you move through danger without hesitation? How do you seem to know what to do when all protocol fails?" She had never heard anyone speak with such simplicity about courage and responsibility. Alien nobles often spoke of honor, duty, or loyalty, but their words were always measured, calculated. Marcus's words carried weight because they were genuine. "You make it sound easy," she said almost bitterly. "Maybe it is," Marcus replied quietly. "Or maybe it is something everyone forgets. Sometimes people think power or fear matters more than it does. I have seen too many things fail because people forgot the simple choices that matter most." Perhaps they were dangerous in a way no one had anticipated. Days passed, and Marcus began to integrate further into palace life. He learned the protocols, studied the history of the Velari Empire, and even participated in minor diplomatic meetings. Everywhere he went, whispers followed. Delegates who had expected weakness were surprised to find a human who listened, who learned quickly, and who acted decisively when required. The princess began to notice something else as well. Marcus did not seek approval. He did not compete for recognition. His focus was on understanding, on observation, and on action when it mattered. He asked questions that challenged assumptions, made suggestions that improved efficiency, and quietly helped those in need. Slowly, Lyria realized that his strength was not just physical or tactical. It was in his resilience, his adaptability, and his refusal to accept limitations. One evening, a minor crisis erupted in the palace's energy grid. A solar collector had malfunctioned, threatening to overload the entire system. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and panic rippled through the staff. Velari engineers scrambled, arguing over protocols and procedures. The princess's first instinct was to intervene, to command, but Marcus had already acted. He ran through the corridors, assessing the problem, issuing calm instructions, and physically rerouting the system to prevent a catastrophic failure. Sparks flew around him, but he remained composed, guiding engineers and guards alike. Within minutes, the situation was under control. The princess, observing from the balcony, felt a mix of awe and disbelief. "You see," one of her advisors whispered, "humans are not what we thought." Instead, they had delivered a human who was quietly challenging everything the princess had learned about strength, courage, and leadership. She realized that the nightmare she had feared, the human, was not the threat. The threat was underestimating him. If the galaxy continued to see humans as weak, it would only be a matter of time before they discovered the truth, and by then it might be too late. As dawn approached, the princess returned to her chambers, her mind restless. She knew one thing with certainty: Marcus Hale was no ordinary human. He was a catalyst, a force that could disrupt centuries of expectation. And the princess, for all her experience and caution, would have to decide whether she would resist him or learn from him. Somewhere in the city, Marcus looked out over the sprawling capital from his modest quarters. He did not know the full weight of what had been expected of him, nor the doubts in the princess's mind. He only knew that he had been chosen, and that he would do his best to honor that choice. Simple, honest, human determination, he thought, could sometimes be more powerful than fear, politics, or even ancient laws. And as the first light of day touched the crystal towers, the quiet truth began to settle across the palace. Humans were underestimated, as always. And the consequences of that underestimation were only just beginning. The palace had grown quiet after weeks of Marcus Hale's presence. The initial tension had faded, replaced by a cautious curiosity from the Velari court. Yet beneath the calm, political currents churned like an unseen storm. Rival factions had not forgotten the human. Some nobles whispered of his audacity, questioning how a fragile species could sit beside their princess. Others quietly feared the change he represented: unpredictability. Humans, after all, were known for bending rules and ignoring protocol. Princess Lyria walked through the corridors at dawn, her thoughts restless. She had spent hours the previous night thinking about Marcus, about his calm bravery, about the ease with which he challenged her assumptions. She had to admit, even if reluctantly, that he was more capable than most of her advisors. Yet she also knew that perception alone could not protect her empire. If the other species saw Marcus as a weak human, they might act against him, or her, to test it. The warning signs arrived sooner than expected. A message flashed on the palace's secure comm system, marked urgent. Lyria took it to her private chamber and opened it. The holographic screen displayed grainy footage of a Velari border station under attack. Alien warships belonging to the Orcs collective had engaged in an unprovoked assault. The station's defenses were struggling. Civilians were trapped and communications were failing. The princess's stomach twisted. The Orcs had long been unpredictable, but they had never dared attack a core Velari station. The timing was suspicious. Why now, when the human had just been integrated into court life? Marcus, summoned immediately, arrived at the command center with his usual calm demeanor. The engineers and guards were tense, voices trembling as they described the situation. Marcus absorbed every detail, his eyes scanning the tactical maps and system readouts. Unlike many, he did not panic. He did not complain. He simply asked questions. How many ships? What are the station's weak points? What civilian areas are most at risk? The room fell silent as his orders began. Guards and engineers, unsure at first, followed his instructions because they saw the clarity and logic in them. Marcus did not hesitate to put himself in danger when necessary. He personally checked the integrity of the station's emergency evacuation routes, ensuring that automated doors would function under attack. He manually rerouted power when automated systems failed, moving through corridors that were already under bombardment. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and emergency lights flickered, yet Marcus remained calm. The princess watched from the observation deck, her heart racing. This human, who she had once thought a liability, was saving lives, doing what her trained guards and elite soldiers struggled to achieve. She felt a strange combination of fear and awe. Could a human really handle this level of crisis without faltering? Apparently, yes. By the time the first wave of Orcs fighters retreated, the station was still standing. Civilian casualties were minimized, and most structural damage was contained. The news spread quickly. A human had led the defense of a Velari station, acting decisively where trained forces had hesitated. Some in the court were stunned into silence. Others whispered nervously, realizing that Marcus Hale was no ordinary human. Later in the aftermath, Marcus found the princess in her private gardens. The air was thick with tension, the scent of alien flowers heavy. Lyria's usual composure was strained. She could not hide the mixture of respect and unease in her eyes. You handled that situation better than anyone could have expected," she said carefully. "I saw you on the observation deck." You didn't just follow orders, you made decisions that saved lives. You were extraordinary. She had seen bravery before, but something about Marcus's approach unsettled her. There was no arrogance, no desire for recognition, only steady determination. He had no desire to dominate or control. He simply acted, and that simple humanity made him far more dangerous than she had imagined. The political repercussions of the attack were immediate. Reports reached the Conquered, prompting urgent discussions among the delegates of other species. Many saw the human as a symbol of Velari resilience, or a new kind of threat. The Orcs had underestimated the defense of the station, and now the story of the human who had orchestrated the rescue began to spread. Galaxies away, whispers circulated in council chambers. Humans were unpredictable, strong in ways no one had anticipated. Within the palace, Lyria found herself caught between admiration and frustration. The human had become the center of attention, quietly challenging her authority without intending to. Every time she attempted to assert control, Marcus acted with a calm logic that made her second-guess herself. Yet she could not ignore the results. His approach worked. His decisions saved lives, stabilized the station, and even prevented a wider war. In the following days, minor crises continued to test the human. A critical supply line for the palace's energy core failed, threatening to disrupt heating, lighting, and defense systems. Engineers panicked. Automated systems malfunctioned. Marcus, without hesitation, devised a manual rerouting system, assigning tasks to palace staff with precise instructions. Within hours, the supply line was restored. No lives were lost. Minimal damage occurred. The princess, observing once more, felt her perspective shifting. Humans, she realized reluctantly, were not bound by rules in the way her people were. Protocols, hierarchy, and tradition guided the Velari, often limiting their flexibility. Marcus, however, could see solutions where others saw chaos. He was unpredictable, but in a way that was not dangerous to others, only to assumptions and expectations. She began to notice the effect he had on those around him. Guards who had been skeptical of a human's presence now spoke of his calm authority. Palace staff who had doubted his ability followed his directions without question. Even alien nobles, previously dismissive, began to seek his opinion on minor matters. In quiet moments, Lyria caught the subtle shifts in behavior. Marcus was changing the court, not by force, but by example. One evening, a message arrived that tested both Marcus and the princess in unexpected ways. The Orcs Collective had announced plans to strike again, this time targeting the capital itself. The threat was real and imminent. Lyria felt a cold weight settle in her chest. The palace had defenses, but nothing could predict the chaos of a coordinated assault. She summoned Marcus immediately. He studied the intelligence reports, pacing slowly. "This is serious," he said. "We cannot prevent all damage, but we can minimize casualties and protect key systems. We need to organize civilians, reroute energy to defensive grids, and prioritize evacuation routes." Marcus directed staff, coordinated with Velari defense units, and even personally inspected critical corridors. As the first Orc ships approached, he moved through the palace like a calm eye in the storm. When minor explosions shook the outer halls, he remained composed, ensuring that every person within reach was safe. By the time the main attack began, Marcus had already stabilized the palace defenses. When Orcs fighters breached the outer perimeter, Velari forces responded effectively, anticipating the invaders' movements with guidance from the humans' earlier preparations. Lyria watched from the command balcony, heart pounding, as Marcus moved among the corridors, checking on staff, adjusting systems, and quietly giving orders. Hours later, the attack was repelled. The Orcs forces withdrew, shocked by the efficiency of the defense. Minimal casualties had occurred, and the palace had survived intact. Marcus, standing beside the princess afterward, showed no signs of exhaustion. You did this," Lyria said quietly, almost in disbelief. "You organized everything, saved countless lives. How did you know what to do? The rest is up to everyone else to follow through." That night, the court buzzed with stories of Marcus Hale. Delegates from other species whispered about the human who had led a successful defense without rank, without authority, and without arrogance. Lyria lay awake, thinking. The nightmare she had feared, the human, was no longer a threat. He was something else entirely, a force the galaxy had never expected, a reminder that courage and intelligence could come in the smallest and least likely forms. And in that moment, The princess understood a truth that would shape the future. Underestimating humans was a mistake the galaxy might never recover from. The palace had barely settled from the last attack when a new tension began to rise, more dangerous than the explosions and chaos that Marcus had faced before. This time, it was not a warship on the horizon or a malfunctioning system. It was politics, news of the human who had saved the Velari border station and later the capital's defenses, spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Allies whispered about the cleverness and courage of Marcus Hale, while rival empires murmured warnings and threats. Princess Lyria sat in her chambers, looking out over the city. The crystal towers shimmered in the early light, but their beauty could not mask the unrest. Reports from the conquered had arrived in rapid succession. Some species demanded that humans be restricted, removed from royal consideration, or monitored more closely. Others, curious and cautious, sent messages of congratulations, acknowledging Marcus's heroism but questioning the long-term consequences. Lyria's advisors crowded around her, each offering suggestions. Some argued that the human should be sent away, placed under strict supervision, or quietly sidelined. Others suggested keeping him close, leveraging his abilities to strengthen the Empire's position. The princess listened, silent, absorbing every argument. "Your Highness," one of her senior advisors said, his tone uneasy, "you must understand, this human, he is unpredictable. We cannot guarantee what he might do next. The galaxy watches, and any mistake could bring disaster. That our empire fears strength that comes in an unexpected form." Meanwhile, Marcus moved through the palace with quiet focus, unaware of the political storm brewing around him. He continued his work, studying defense systems, coordinating with engineers, and ensuring that the palace could withstand any potential threat. His actions were simple, practical, and precise, yet they carried weight. Every minor improvement he made strengthened the palace, and every small decision he took saved lives. Some of the nobles began to resent him. They whispered in corridors, mocking the idea that a human, a supposedly weak species, could influence palace operations or gain the princess's attention. They could not understand how someone so different could command respect without arrogance or dominance. Their whispers reached Lyria's ears, yet she did not intervene. She knew that Marcus's influence came not from her protection or orders, but from the quiet strength of his actions. The situation escalated when a faction of rival empires threatened open war unless the human bond was broken. They argued that the conquered's law had been misapplied, that no human could be trusted in a royal alliance, and that Marcus's presence undermined centuries of intergalactic order. Lyria received the official message in the Grand Council chamber, the holographic text glowing ominously before her. She read it aloud, her voice steady, though her mind raced. Delegates shouted, argued, and gestured wildly, but Lyria stood firm, her gaze fixed on the holographic message. She knew the right choice, even if it carried risk. She turned to the assembly, her voice loud and clear. "Marcus Hale is not a threat. He is a protector, and he will remain by my side by choice, not by law." Her decision was not just about the human. It was about the Empire, its future, and the truth she had finally accepted. Strength did not come from tradition, rank, or species. It came from action, courage, and determination. Marcus entered the chamber quietly, having been summoned by the princess. He had been briefed about the situation only in general terms, yet he remained calm. He observed the chaos of alien delegates, the outrage in their expressions, and the tension in the room. Then he turned to the princess, ready to follow her lead, but also prepared to act if necessary. "You are certain," he asked softly, "if the council moves against us, there could be consequences. Not because the law forced it, but because you have proven yourself every day. I will not allow fear to dictate our actions." The debate continued, but the princess's stance was clear. Marcus's calm presence, combined with his previous successes, made it impossible for the council to act without risking a larger conflict. Some factions withdrew their demands quietly, realizing that pushing further could provoke a response they were unprepared to handle. Others continued to grumble, but even they could not deny the human's impact. In the days that followed, the palace returned to its usual rhythm, though the political landscape had shifted. Marcus continued his work, moving through the corridors, inspecting systems, and quietly improving operations. He did not seek recognition, yet the effect of his actions was undeniable. Guards respected him. Staff trusted him. Even the princess's advisors, previously skeptical, began to see the value in his insights. Lyria observed him closely. She had never met anyone like Marcus before. He was not a commander in the traditional sense, nor a scholar, nor a politician. Yet his combination of calm judgment, practical intelligence, and courage made him more effective than anyone she had encountered. Slowly, she began to understand that the nightmare she had feared, the human, was not a threat at all. It was the galaxy's assumptions about humans that were dangerous. They underestimated him. They underestimated what his species could achieve when faced with adversity. And Lyria knew with a certainty that surprised her that this human could change everything. One afternoon, a minor crisis tested their bond once more. A sudden failure in the palace's water filtration system threatened the entire royal wing. Poisonous gases began to leak into the hallways and alarms blared. Engineers scrambled, but the systems were complex and time was short. Marcus reacted immediately. He assessed the damage, redirected power manually, and coordinated evacuation routes. The princess followed him, moving through the corridors as he gave calm instructions. Together, they ensured that no one was harmed, that damage was minimized, and that the palace's operations remained functional. After the crisis was resolved, Lyria paused in a quiet corridor, watching Marcus catch his breath. "You never hesitate," she said softly. "No matter the danger, no matter the complexity, you act. How do you remain so calm?" She could see the truth in his words, the wisdom behind his simplicity. Humans, she realized, were not defined by their limitations. They were defined by their choices, by the courage to act when it mattered most. That evening, the princess held a private council with Marcus. They discussed potential threats, strategies for strengthening palace defenses, and ways to prepare for diplomatic challenges. Lyria listened, absorbing his ideas, weighing his perspectives, and learning in a way she had never anticipated. "You have changed the way I see leadership," she admitted quietly. "Not because of what you do with weapons or orders, but because of the way you see the world. You act and others follow. You inspire trust without demanding it. It is unsettling. I cannot imagine the palace without you now." He was the proof that the galaxy had underestimated humans for too long, and he was the reminder that courage, intelligence, and determination could come from the smallest and least likely sources. In the quiet of her chambers, Lyria made a decision. She would stand by Marcus, not because the law demanded it, but because she believed in him. And in doing so, she accepted a new truth. The nightmare she had feared, the human, was no longer her enemy. He was her ally, her partner, and the catalyst for a future that no one in the galaxy could predict. And somewhere in the heart of the Velari capital, the quiet power of a human being slowly began to reshape the empire. One thoughtful decision, one act of courage, and one calm choice at a time. The sky above the Velari capital burned with light. Ships from multiple alien empires hung in orbit, their weapons aimed, their pilots tense. Rumors had become reality. A coalition of rivals intended to challenge the Velari Empire directly, using the human Marcus Hale as a reason for war. They argued that allowing a human into royal bonds weakened the empire, undermined tradition, and threatened stability across the galaxy. Princess Lyria stood on the palace balcony, the wind brushing her silver hair. The city below seemed impossibly small compared to the enormity of what was about to happen. Civilians were secure, palace defenses were at maximum readiness, and Marcus was at her side. She had spent weeks watching him, learning from him, trusting him in ways she had never imagined possible. And now the galaxy was about to test both of them. Marcus did not speak immediately. He surveyed the fleets in orbit, noting the patterns, distances, and possible weaknesses. His calm presence was a stark contrast to the tension of the surrounding generals and advisors. Lyria could feel the eyes of the galaxy on them, the weight of expectation pressing down, but Marcus did not flinch. He had faced chaos before, and he would face it again. "We need to act carefully," Marcus said quietly. "These ships are coordinated, but they are relying on fear as much as force. If we stay calm and respond decisively, we can minimize casualties and show the galaxy that strength is not determined by species alone." The time for careful diplomacy was over. Action would speak louder than words. The first wave of enemy ships moved in, and the Velari defense fleet responded immediately. Marcus directed reinforcements, reconfigured defensive grids, and coordinated emergency protocols. Unlike many commanders who relied on rigid strategy, he adapted in real time, anticipating moves, improvising solutions, and keeping communication lines clear. Even Lyria, experienced in strategy and politics, found herself amazed. Marcus acted without hesitation, moving among the officers, the engineers, and the pilots, guiding everyone with precision. Where panic might have spread, calm efficiency reigned. Humans, she realized again, were underestimated not because of weakness, but because no one expected them to be this capable. Hours passed in a tense blur of maneuvering, laser fire, and shouted orders. Enemy ships fell back, then regrouped, testing the Velari defenses repeatedly. Each time, Marcus anticipated the threats, adjusted responses, and prevented damage. Civilians were kept safe, critical systems remained operational, and the palace remained untouched. The princess watched him, her heart a mixture of pride and awe. He was no longer just a human beside her. He had become the symbol of the Velari Empire's resilience, the proof that courage and intelligence transcended species. She had feared the worst when the Conquered's law placed him in her life, but that fear had been replaced with understanding. Marcus was not a threat. He was a force the galaxy could not ignore. At the peak of the battle, a massive strike group broke through the outer defenses, targeting the palace directly. Lasers streaked across the sky, and alarms blared inside the corridors. Marcus did not hesitate. He activated secondary shields manually, directed critical personnel to safe zones, and coordinated counterattacks. The princess followed, moving with him through the command center, witnessing his calm decisiveness. One of the enemy ships breached the upper perimeter, closing on the palace itself. The situation was dire. For a moment, even Lyria felt the weight of despair, but Marcus did not falter. He analyzed the ship's trajectory, its energy output, and the defenses remaining. Then he acted. With precise coordination, he redirected energy from non-essential systems to the palace's defense shields, manually recalculated targeting vectors for the Velari fleet, and issued orders that seemed impossible to follow. Yet the crew obeyed, inspired by his clarity and confidence. In minutes, the enemy ship was destroyed, pulled from orbit by its own miscalculations and the Velari fleet's countermeasures. The battle was not over, but the momentum had shifted. Enemy ships began to retreat, realizing that the Velari defenses, guided by the human, were far more capable than they had anticipated. News of Marcus's actions spread instantly through communication networks, reaching fleets across the galaxy. The human had proven that species alone did not determine strength, and that courage, intelligence, and quick thinking could rival the most advanced technology. Hours later, the skies cleared. The Velari Empire had survived the attack. The city remained intact. Casualties were minimal. Marcus, standing beside the princess, looked over the horizon, his expression calm as ever. Lyria felt a wave of relief wash over her, mixed with a deep respect she could no longer deny. "You did it," she said quietly. "You saved us all. You inspired confidence, and you acted when it mattered. That is leadership, Marcus, that is strength." Marcus's actions had shifted perceptions overnight. Humans were no longer considered weak or irrelevant. They were unpredictable, yes, but unpredictability carried power when paired with intelligence, courage, and morality. Lyria convened a special council in the Grand Hall. Delegates from across the galaxy attended, each aware of the humans' achievements. She stood before them, her voice firm, her presence commanding. "This council has witnessed the actions of Marcus Hale," she said. "He is human, yes, but he has proven his courage, his intelligence, and his loyalty. He is no threat to the Velari Empire or to the galaxy. To remove him now would be to deny the truth we have seen. Humans are capable, humans are strong. And they deserve to be judged not by assumptions, but by their actions." In the quiet that followed the council, the princess and Marcus walked through the palace gardens. The air was filled with the soft glow of alien flora, the city lights reflecting in crystal rivers. For the first time, Lyria allowed herself to speak freely. "You have changed everything," she said, "not just here but across the galaxy. They will not forget what humans are capable of now. And thanks to you, they will think twice before doing so again." The days that followed were filled with rebuilding and diplomacy. Marcus continued to work quietly, improving systems, training staff, and guiding decisions with practical wisdom. The princess observed, learning from him, growing not just as a ruler but as a person willing to trust in unexpected strength. As months passed, the bond between the princess and the human solidified, not because of law, not because of expectation, but because of mutual respect, trust, and understanding. Lyria realized that the Conquered's law, which she had once feared, had delivered something far greater than she had imagined. The nightmare had become a partner, a teacher, and a symbol of hope. Across the galaxy, humans began to gain recognition. Stories of Marcus Hale spread, inspiring others to reconsider the potential of their own species. No longer were humans dismissed as weak or reckless. Instead, they were seen as capable, courageous, and worthy of trust and respect. The princess watched Marcus one evening as he walked calmly among the palace gardens, observing and speaking with staff, his presence quiet but commanding. She could see now that the true strength of humanity was not in their technology, or their numbers, or even their rank. It was in their ability to act decisively, to care for others, and to rise to challenges that seemed impossible. And she knew, with a certainty that left her breathless, that the nightmare she had feared, the human, was never the danger. The real danger had been the galaxy's underestimation of humans, a danger now corrected by the courage and wisdom of one man who refused to be ignored. The Valari Empire was safe, the Council had acknowledged the truth, and the galaxy had seen a glimpse of what humans could achieve. Princess Lyria, standing beside Marcus, understood that this was only the beginning. Humans had not yet reached their full potential, but they had shown enough to make the universe pause, reconsider, and respect them. And in that pause, the future was open, full of possibility, full of challenges, and full of humans ready to rise to meet them. For the first time, the princess allowed herself a smile. The nightmare was over. The human, as she had feared, had changed everything. But instead of destruction, he had brought hope, courage, and the undeniable proof that humanity was, in its own quiet and extraordinary way, a force the galaxy could never ignore.